One of the things I want to talk about before we're out of time, we'll probably talk more about it for the members in the post game, but is what happens if the Republicans win and hold on to one of these seats. Remember, they don't have to win both, they just have to win one. And right now, Purdue is leading us off by 1.4 points with 78% reporting. If Purdue holds on and they split and the Republicans hold the Senate, well, that's a nightmare scenario. Probably the worst case scenario, because the Republicans only have a little bit of power, right? They don't have the House, they don't have the presidency, and they only have a 1-seat lead. And theoretically, if you are good at politics, you could easily get one person on the other side to break, depending on, again, the offers and the negotiations, etc. But my prediction is that the Democrats and Joe Biden will immediately surrender on all of their policy issues. They'll do what they can, a little bit, half of what they can through executive orders. But things like $15 minimum wage, which should be a layup, they should absolutely kill them on that until they win 2022 in a landslide. They won't do any of that. I don't think they're actually for $15 minimum wage. They will use that as an excuse to unilaterally surrender on almost all their policy initiatives. That's my take on what happens if the Democrats don't pick up both seats tonight. I'll get to the other half of the equation, what if they do, in a second. But I'm curious, Aida and Anna, what you guys think. What do you guys think are gonna happen if the Republicans hold the Senate?
Well, I think that, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I think that if the Republicans hold the Senate, it's a perfect excuse that Democrats will cite for why they can't pass policy proposals that an overwhelming majority of the electorate wants. And I'm not just talking about Democrats, I'm talking about Republicans as well. If you look at some of these red states that have passed ballot initiatives to increase minimum wage, Florida being one of the more recent examples, it's pretty clear that these economic policies that have been championed by progressives appeal to a broad base of voters. Right now, though, I'm now gonna move on to what I think is gonna happen if the two Democrats do win tonight, because I think that's a more interesting question, to be honest with you. Right now, Joe Manchin's name is trending on Twitter for good reason. Joe Manchin loves the fact that he is gonna be in a pretty significant position of power, right? Because he will be the Democrat who is very likely to side with Republicans on those progressive policy proposals that we desperately need passed. And so, Manchin's gonna be a problem, there's no question. That's part of the reason why I'm not as excited about tonight as I think most establishment Democrats are. I think that tonight is important, but I don't think that this is an election, or these two Senate runoff races are going to put us over the edge in getting what we desperately need in this country. You get what I'm saying? So that's why maybe it's just more of my pessimism. And to be clear, I would prefer for the Democratic candidates to win. But with that said, we already have Joe Manchin. Again, he in multiple Fox News appearances, raising his hand and saying, I don't know, I will be an obstacle to the Democrats. And I believe him.
Yeah, I've got a lot to say about that in a second, but Aida, what's your take?
It's so funny because I have to say that when Anna says she's being pessimistic or cynical, I don't think so. I think you're just being a reasonable American at this point to feel that what's gonna change if the Republicans remain in office. The clown show that we've been watching for the last 12 years is going to continue, the dog and pony show. And American government politicians have convinced everyday Americans that they have the same problems as them, and that they are fighting for those problems in Washington, which we all know that's not the case. So you have a whole bunch of people who are struggling, who are voting against their best interests. And I think that's just gonna continue. A bunch of people fighting for rich corporations to keep running our country, for tax breaks for the rich. And those who are in the positions of privilege and power continue to sprinkle lies and keep these people believing that they're fighting for whatever it is, by making them afraid of me and immigrants and whatever the talking points are that keep them doing that. And I agree with Anna. I think that if the Democrats take control of the Senate, not much is gonna change either, because what we have is a bunch of negotiables in Washington that we got to get rid of. And as we gut it out, and little by little, which is what we've been doing with our progressive candidates, is we got to get rid of those people. But I just want to watch. Like, for me now, it's just a game. Like, let's see what happens and see how far they bend backwards and not do everything that they said they were going to do again. Now, I always take the liberty to speak on behalf of the people that come from the marginalized areas, Black and brown people, poor people. Those of us that come from these places don't believe anything is gonna change, because nothing has ever been in place to benefit us greatly. It's never, ever been, there's never been an administration that we can say, yo, they really did it and made our lives better. So it's just funny and interesting to watch the rest of the people in this country now experience the foolishness that this government has been sprinkling on its people forever, as we watch these corporations really take a handle over our country and run the show.
So real quick, sorry, Cenk, I know you want to jump in, but so Joe Manchin's name, once I saw it trending, maybe I shouldn't assume things, because I just thought, well, Manchin has just said multiple times that he doesn't plan on going along with Democrats, and he's had like a record that sometimes goes along with Republicans, so I believe him on that. But the reason why he's trending is because today, this late in the game, he decided to write an op-ed for CNN where he talks about the importance of the Constitution and the importance of Donald Trump conceding to Joe Biden. Our Constitution clearly defines this process. Let me be clear, the current partisan push to reject the election results is an effort to overturn the will of the people, and it is unconstitutional. Cool, the election happened weeks and weeks ago. I'm glad that he took this bold stance on the Constitution this late in the game. I'm not impressed by Joe Manchin, ever.
Yeah, I'm gonna get to Manchin in a second. First, let me give you a little bit of election results. So Purdue was 77% reporting, so there's a little back and forth on the percentages, still leading by 2. Loeffler leading Warnock by exactly 1 point with 77% reporting. But Dave Wasserman, one of the so-called top experts, his pre-election analysis, in my opinion, is terrible. But he does have access to a huge amount of information that we don't have access to, because that's mainly what he does for a living. Anyway, he says, I've seen enough. Raphael Warnock defeats Senator Kelly Loeffler in Georgia's special Senate runoff. So they think, based on where the votes are coming in for the last 23%, that Warnock will win relatively easily against Loeffler. So we'll see if that's true. Certainly not true right now, and so we'll see how that develops. All right. So now, what if the Democrats win both of these seats tonight? Then am I hopeful about a lot of change? No, I think that what is going to happen is, that's the scenario I'm really rooting for a number of reasons. Number one, Republicans controlling any chamber means Democrats will always surrender, will have nothing done at all, okay? So on that alone, it's a no-brainer, obviously support the Democrats. Number two, and this is the important part, if you're in the camp that if the Democrats have all 3 chambers, which they would if they win both seats tonight, that they're going to do everything that's on their agenda, you're nuts. You don't know anything about politics. They're not going to do their agenda. They're going to tiptoe, they're going to dance, they're going to wait, they're going to ask for permission from the Republicans, they're going to negotiate with Joe Manchin on behalf of the Republicans, they're going to water all the bills down, etc. So what am I looking forward to then? I'm looking forward to the fight, because there we got a fighter's chance. So when Manchin said, look, for example, Paid Family and Leave Act, that should, if Democrats win tonight, $2,000 checks should be a foregone conclusion. Trust me that they'll hem and haw, but it would be outrageous if they didn't do it. So they'll have an instant rebellion/revolution on their hands if they don't do that. Number 2, Paid Family Leave Act. I keep going back to that because it's so easy. If you have all 3 chambers and you can't pass that, you're I mean, in a lot of ways, the Democratic Party is already the most incompetent party we've ever seen in our lifetimes, but that would cement it for good, breaking all world records. But when the rubber hits the road at $15 minimum wage, that should also be an easy layup. It is wildly popular in every state, including every red state. So far, it's had 23 ballot measures in every kind of state, including deeply red states. It's 23-0. No one has ever voted against raising the minimum wage, the actual voters. I guarantee you ahead of time, if the Democrats get the Senate, they will pause on $15 minimum wage and they will try everything to delay it at a minimum. They're like, well, I mean, we could do it by 2025. It's a gradual, it goes up gradually. But how about 2035 or 2045? So it's a backdoor way of killing it. And then they'll say, we compromised. Joe Manchin and Mitch McConnell are heroes. And Jake Tapper and the rest of the media, my guess is we'll go back to applauding bipartisan compromise. If minimum wage, $15 minimum wage, you all have it. In the year 2075, right? So at that point, when they think they're gonna do that trick, which they've done my whole life, that's when, again, the rebellion starts. And that's when the anger will not be contained. And so then it's the progressives versus the corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans. And that's a fight I love and can't wait for. And on the $15 minimum wage, I'm telling you right now, that's a fight we're gonna win. By hook or by crook, we're gonna do everything, we're gonna fight like hell, and we're gonna win that fight. And we're gonna beat the Republicans, we're gonna beat Joe Manchin if we need to. We're gonna beat the blue dog Democrats, and if Biden's in the way, we'll beat him too. We're doing it by, at the latest, 2025 graduated. No more. I'm not having conversations about decades of waiting before increasing the minimum wage. Guys, that's the easy stuff. So look, can Biden actually pass an infrastructure bill that helps the environment? Well, if he does, then you have to give him some degree of credit. It depends on the size, it depends on the details. Devil's always in the details, right? But if he can't get that done, then he was a failure, honestly. And right now, I got it at 50-50. No, 55-45 against. No, 60-40 against.
Yeah, it's better. It's a good number.
Yeah. And then beyond that, if you were hoping that Schumer and Pelosi and Biden all overnight were going to change their minds and introduce Medicare for all, that's not how it's gonna go down. That doesn't mean you can't force a vote. You can at some point in the next 2 years, and we definitely should, and as early as possible. But Democratic leadership is exactly like the Republicans on that issue. They both hate Medicare for all, because that would give you guys health care in the middle of a pandemic, but it would hurt their donors a tiny bit. It would put a little dent in the massive billions of dollars of profits of donors to Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell. So there's no way, and Schumer and Pelosi and Kevin McCarthy. So there's no way they're gonna do that. But I also relish that fight. But let's go, for some folks that are on the left now saying let's go one at a time through the Family Leave Act and the $15 minimum wage, et cetera, is now an abomination. No, let's all do it at the same time with no strategy. For those folks, I don't know that they're ever gonna be appeased, okay? But for everyone else, there's no question the next 2 years, we're having all of these fights. The question is if we're gonna have them in a smart, strategic way where we win. So stay right here, because that's kind of what we do. And we've been doing it a long time. And I think now we're in a position where we have a lot of strength and a lot of leverage. And by the way, if the Democrats win these two, it's, I think, largely because of the progressive organizations, African Americans, Stacey Abrams, and all those folks who did amazing work to get people to show up in these difficult situations. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.